for your projects, and I get it, because there's precedence for, everything else. But if we as a city do not get our hands wrapped around stormwater management in a better way, the code that was actually cited actually allows for the city engineer to go green infrastructure. Bioswales are actually starting to fail. Even if we went larger, to your point, I will tell you that the data actually shows that bioswales and biobasins are starting to fail, only because the rainfall that is actually happening and occurring and projected to happen in the future is larger than what we expected. So we have to look as a city at other alternatives, green infrastructures that help promote the water, going down in the aquifers. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. And that's why I was saying I was trying to draw a line, in parting this, but I struggled because I couldn't find the documentations, and I understand that this was not this administration, it was even not the previous administration, it was even, 2 administrations ago. And I still don't have a clear understanding on how an agreement occurred without it being a public document and without it being by the elected body.
Mr. Renner, understand that when I was asked to get involved in this project by the Buckles family on behalf of their attorney, I spent probably 6 months digging into all of the legislation, all the zoning, and finding all these documents that had occurred from those prior administrations. So it was my duty and obligation to the family and to the attorney to present these documents to them and said, this is the history. So my duties to them
Yes.
is to perform under those
Yes.
those
And
documents.
I understand that implicitly.
And I will say this, that particular location, and I'd be happy to email you soils reports, because obviously over the time now since we've built the streets, built the buildings, put utilities in, we've done soil reports and soil borings for each of those projects, the roadway and everything. One of the difficulties of doing bioswales or permeable surfaces is there's a lot of shale in that corridor, a lot of rock. So those necessarily won't do the purpose or won't work under that geological underbody of that site. So we went to great expense to dig the current basin we have in place to accommodate these 4 buildings that we're going to be doing. That became very expensive. And needless to say, the delay from a year ago when we were hoping to get these projects going to now, as we all know what has happened with supplies and inflation and so on, we're looking at a 40% increase in the cost of extending these roads and putting these utilities in that the Buckles are going to have to eat just to make these deals happen for the city. And I'd hate to see us number one, I'd hate to see this go in a direction that would delay it any further, legally or otherwise, from the Buckles family, let alone the amount of payroll that we're talking about with this 150 to 180,000 square feet that's going to be added to what's there. I mean, we're talking a significant payroll that I'd hate to see us all lose and then have this delay even further. So believe me, I've been doing this a long time, and you know that I am very conscientious in what I do. You know that historically with me. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to reflect poorly on me, on the Buckles, or the city. But this is one of those situations where we had to follow what was provided by the previous administrations and the previous 2 engineers that I worked with. I mean, understand what I've gone through the last 2.5 years? Please. I should have thrown, other developers would have thrown in the flag and said, heck with this, I'm going to another city and work because it's a lot easier. So I put up with a lot around here, and I've truly appreciated the cooperation from the new team, the old team, Michael, everybody. But any more delays internally with this, I'm going to lose the Buckles' patience, and I don't know how much more I have, because I'm excited to get this stuff going. And I'm already working on the next phase, the 41 acres. And we have users lined up very similar in nature, medical-oriented, that want to go there now, because they said, shoot, we missed out on that first phase. How do we get into the next one? So please understand my position in trying to keep all the balls in the air and keep you folks happy and the clients happy and these doctors happy. It's a tough task, trust me.
Understand, and that's why I began with, I'm trying to draw a line, and so I thank you. I still thank you for public, and I'm already stated on the public record that I'm voting yes for this. I'm fully in support of you getting even the waiver in emergency. I was just trying to divert a little bit and saying, again, not with your project, but as a city, we need to really understand stormwater management and in combination with what our climate is actually changing.
To Rob's credit, previous engineer prior to John, Rob worked on some residential projects where it makes sense. It's a little bit more difficult to do it in a corporate or commercial type project. But to his credit, and again, we'll look at doing some of that in the next phase if we can, where it makes sense economically. But right now, it's a difficult climate with inflation and cost of pipe and cost of fuel. I mean, it's insane what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky to get these developers and myself and these medical people who, again, are taking an ownership in the business. They're not just coming in and signing a 5-year lease. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're committing to own the building. And they love that opportunity that we're giving them, because a lot of developers don't want that. They want the rental income.
Right.
We're not doing that. We're making them partners in these opportunities, and in most cases, they own it 100%. So they're here for the long haul, beyond the CRA, beyond the tax abatement, all that. So we're really ingraining these people in the community. So the last thing I want to do is go to them and say, hey, sorry, but you got to reduce the size of your building, or you got to buy an extra half acre to do an additional storm basin because they're turning the waiver down.
Yep.
So,
Understood.
okay. I appreciate that. Appreciate your understanding.
You want to go next? Okay, Mr. Schnetzer, and then I'll come back around to the ends. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Kennedy. Appreciate the background information. Just a
Thank you,
brief
Mr.
question.
Schnetzer.
The little pizza wedge, for lack of a better description, that we're talking about here, that is the Buckles Track North. How many total acres is that, including the existing development?
Good question.
Ballpark is fine.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Originally, it was 21 acres.
That works.
Yeah, a wellness center took, well, the roadway takes up, let's say, an acre and a half, whatever that is. The basin took up an acre.
So
Wellness.
topographically speaking, it's 20-ish acres or so.
20
Yeah.
acres,
So
right.
I would contend that much of those 20 acres, given the clay soil, the shale, the topography, I'm somewhat familiar with that area. It's all running off into Big Walnut anyway. For the most part, there's not going to be a lot of absorption. So I don't view the request as being unreasonable. And if, city administration, including the engineer's office, has looked at it and is recommending that it be discharged, I think that's okay.
Mrs. McGregor?
Thank you for being persistent for the long haul. And don't misunderstand my question. I just wondered what kind of the total thing of what we were waiving, so what the alternative was. So that was all my
Nancy,
only.
you've known me a long time. You know how excited I get, okay? I'm Italian, I'm sorry. I
A
get
few more
passionate
trees.
about what I do.
Let's get a few more trees in there.
Mrs. Angelou?
Well, I want to make a comment because I think this is probably one of the best projects we've ever had for the city. And for us to make it go further without doing anything would be a shame. And so I think we ought to move forward on this, and we trust you, Mr. Canini, to come back through. Now, and I'd like to ask a question. When will the housing
So,
component happen?
we have submitted the engineering, which is the infrastructure and the roadway plan, to the staff, City Engineers Department. They're reviewing it now, providing us comments soon. And I'm comfortable to say that myself and the Casto organization, which is the residential developer, we have made the decision to partner together, and we have actually signed an agreement to buy the Buckles out of that 41 acres. So they will no longer be involved. We have agreed to their price so that we can move more rapidly on this project and not be tethered by them and held up by them.
So that would be the next
The
component.
41-acre mixed-use area.
And
So-
then there will potentially be, after that, the areas that you would bring in some kind of,
Of that 41 acres, you had all approved the 14 acres for the residential.
Right.
That leaves about 26 acres left to be developed. We, of course, shared a master concept plan with you with hotels and retail and such. But as I just said earlier, we are already getting inquiries from medical users who did not take advantage of the first location and are asking about opportunities here. So,
Yeah, this
and
is
if-
really terrific.
and if I may, Mr. Renner, you were, of course, there at the Planning Commission meeting a couple weeks ago when I presented Lot 2 in the FDP for that. And as you know, I shared the information on those disciplines that were in that building. And I'm happy to share, and I can't use specific names, but I will say that we have a large gastro group that is going to build their own building on Lot 1, and we have secured a national cancer center for Lot 3. I cannot disclose who that is, but those are the 3 large users that we are trying to accommodate in this plat you're reviewing tonight.
And we need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canini. Any further discussion tonight? Let's move this forward, I guess, on regular agenda with waiver and emergency.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Canini. Moving on to Section D of the agenda, items from the Department of Public Service and Engineering. I'm assuming we'll start in order with Resolution RES-0016-2022, a resolution adopting the 2022 Sidewalk Maintenance Program area. Engineer Ridge and Director Crawford.
Thank you. Oh, is it catching me? There we go. Thank you. So tonight we're bringing forward the program area, the sidewalk maintenance program area for the 2022 program. As you know, we had our first, we're in the middle of our first sidewalk program. This would be our second sidewalk program. It's much larger than the first. So we are looking to have council adopt the program area that we've defined for the 2022 program area. Initially, I don't know that you want me to go through and read all the different places that we have here, but you have an attachment with a map that shows each of those locations. They are spread throughout the city. As you can tell, there are numerous more. We're starting this by going back and looking at our past street programs. So we went back as far as 2010 to see what streets have been done and trying to figure out how many we could get done with the budget that you've approved for the sidewalk program with the ADA funds. Looking at this, we're able to get through multiple past street programs in one of our programs, sidewalk programs, that is. We have a total of 619 parcels that are going to be a part of the 2022 program area. Upon approval of this sidewalk program area, an inspection program will be completed for the purpose of maintaining all the sidewalks that are in those areas, make sure that they're in a good and orderly state of repair. Again, this is to protect the health and safety and welfare of the public. It's the purpose of the sidewalk maintenance program. The property owners within the program area whose sidewalks are in need of repair or replacement will be mailed a notification indicating that there are sidewalk deficiencies, and then that estimated cost will be assessed or paid in full by the property owner as part of the sidewalk maintenance program. Information then on how to opt out of the program or to stay in the sidewalk maintenance program will be provided. This is a similar step of what we've recently discussed that's happened with the 2021 sidewalk program. If you have any other questions, I did want to state the reason that we are going back through starting with our past street programs is that as we do our street programs, we are updating the curb ramps and the crosswalks. So the intent is to follow them so that as we go through with the sidewalk program, that we will have a fully compliant, ADA compliant sidewalk or pedestrian path. So that's why we've chosen to follow our street programs. Obviously, since we're going back to 2010, we may run into a few cases where we're still going to have to update some of the ramps, but we have been updating them for the last several years. And so as we get closer and closer to our program we have now, the intent is, within 6 years, we'll get up through our current year's program, and everything will go a lot smoother and have fully compliant pedestrian facilities throughout the neighborhoods that we're updating for with each sidewalk program.
Thank you, Ms. Ridge. Discussion on this item. Mr. Renner.
I have one question. I was trying to search through the documents. When are residents going to be sent a notice and all that kind of stuff? When does this start?
So once you guys approve the sidewalk program area, we will be notifying the residents that are within the program area just that they are in the sidewalk maintenance program. So if this goes through, this is a resolution, so if this goes through next week and passes effective next week, but for the end of the week, hopefully by Wednesday, we are prepared to send out the notifications in mail. So then that we can begin in beginning of August with beginning inspections so that they can get through those inspections before we get into winter weather so that we won't run into the delays, I believe, that we ran into last year. So that is the first notice. The notice for the actual defects, projected right now, and again, the actual defects, that's what we've just gone through with the 2021 program. We are looking at potentially having those go out. Let me look here. I have the schedule up. In February, March timeframe. So early spring, kind of next year, once construction is able to start getting up again, we'll send out those notices so that they can make the update. If those who choose to opt out, if the owners want to make the repairs themselves, they can do that during the spring, and then we'll be prepared to, by the summer, directly following that, actually construct the 2022 program.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. McGregor?
Just want, this is, how many parcels are in this, the one we're doing this year? I know,
619. Oh, and the 21 program.
yeah, the first
It's
program.
200.
It's just, I know it's a
I'm
lot
gonna say
bigger, I just
240,
was
but I
curious
have
to
no
know
idea
how.
why.
That's okay, 200 is good enough.
Yeah,
It's a lot more.
Between 200 and 300. I'm trying to remember. I think it's like 218
Okay,
is what I'm thinking.
thank you.
If I could also add, Ms. Ridge, I know outlined what the projected timeline would be. Again, this is a resolution, so if it is adopted by council next week, just notice to those within the program area that they're within the program area, information on the program. Then we would schedule a town hall, just as we did for those who were within the 2021 program area. Right now, we're projecting that to tentatively be the first week of August, based on
Yeah, August 2nd.
when the notices go out, so that we can have that town hall and inform everybody within the 2022 program area how the program works, what to expect, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda?
Yes.
All right. And then I'm assuming you'll go through ordinance number ORD-0034-2022, ORD-0035-2022, and ORD-0036-2022 together.
Yes, the next week. Yeah. So looking at Gahanna Code Chapter 903. Gahanna Code Chapter 903.04, or Section 903.04, requires that a sidewalk permit and a fee for construction of sidewalk for a sidewalk that's within the right-of-way. That fee is collected as part of this sidewalk permit to perform inspection. The right-of-way construction permit is also required whenever someone wants to do sidewalk construction within the right-of-way. So right now, there's two permits required, the sidewalk permit and the right-of-way permit. In order to eliminate this redundancy of permits and improve the efficiency overall for the applicants and also within the city, we would like to obtain to remove the sidewalk permit. So we propose to remove the sidewalk permit and amend it instead, the fee that's collected for the sidewalk permit to be an inspection fee for the sidewalk. So as part of the right-of-way permit, we would collect the inspection fee when someone does sidewalk repairs within the right-of-way. We request, like as part of the sidewalk maintenance program, when someone opts out and wants to do the repairs themselves, now instead of having to potentially get 2 permits for that, they would go and just get the right-of-way permit, and we do inspections before concrete gets poured and then at the completion to make sure that it meets our criteria. So this would allow the engineering department to perform those inspections and get paid to perform those inspections. So we're requesting that council issue legislation adopting the proposed amendments for Gahanna Code Section 903.04, which is the permit fees for sidewalk construction. The other code chapter that and sections that we are looking at are in Chapter 907. So 907.03 is the inspection section. This whole chapter is for driveways and curb cuts. Similar to the sidewalk permit section, there is a driveway approach permit that currently is required for any work that's done in your driveway approach. We also require a right-of-way permit. And again, instead of having that redundancy, we want to eliminate that, allow people just to go in for a right-of-way permit. And this section of code refers to an inspection fee for driveway approaches, so that inspection fee will still stay and will just be collected instead of as part of a driveway approach permit, will be collected as part of the right-of-way permit. Again, this is another item that with the sidewalk program, we're going to have several people who are going to have to go through this as well. So this kind of helps speed up that process for them. There's also an amendment to 907.03, which changes the responsible party of the inspectors. It currently says it's the chief building official, but as I mentioned, it's the engineering department that is doing these inspections. So we are changing that to be the responsible director or their designee. There's also in 907.04 a section called width of driveway curb cuts. This section we're requesting to be removed. The first section in 907 actually refers to the standards and requirements that were needed. And so, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead into another one. The width of the driveway and curb cut specifies the dimensions of the driveway and curb cuts. It specifically references to commercial and industrial establishments only. This also does apply to residential, so we're just wanting to strike out the reference to commercial and industrial establishments. So we're requesting to pass legislation for those changes to Chapter 907. Then the last one is to 909.04, which is driveway drainage. And this section in the fees sets forth an inspection fee requirement for driveway construction. However, it refers to Gahanna Code 145.10, which no longer exists. So the administration is proposing to update this section by simply striking that reference to that 145.10.
I have a question on 907.04. So I know you said that it applies to residential currently, but where? And are we enforcing it on existing residential currently?
Yes. It is per the City of Columbus standards that we adopt and follow.
Okay.
They have standards, we try to follow those. I don't know if you can help me out where we started. Since I've been here, it's always been enforced in residential, so maybe Mr. Crawford can help answer that question more.
I don't have a specific date as to when maybe those guidelines got updated, but as long as I've been here, we have followed City of Columbus standards and specifications. So I think code was just lagging behind our processes.
I guess I guess the concern that I have is what if somebody redid their driveway 10 years ago and they have no need to redo their driveway right now and it's a residential, it's a homeowner? If we make this change to our code, I mean, there's no ability for us to waive that code requirement for the homeowner that doesn't need to replace their driveway right now. Can we consider, can we consider,
I don't think a resident would be forced into replacing their driveway.
It'd just
Maybe I'm
be if-
missing the question, but there is a part here of the code that says unless otherwise approved by the city engineer. So there's always going to be, one-off circumstances that would take, additional review by the city engineer.
And we wouldn't be, wouldn't be like a code enforcement item where we would go and get people for. This would be if you're making repairs to your driveway
Okay.
and submitting a right-of-way permit to make repairs to your driveway, this is when we would.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so this would be for new construction or for people who are
Replacement.
redoing, okay. Thank you. All right. Anything else on 34, 35, or 36? Chapters 903, 907, 909? No? Okay. On for first reading, no need to come back? And then consent?
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Ordinance number ORD-0037-2022, an ordinance authorizing the Department of Public Service and Engineering to award and the mayor to enter into contract with Gahanna Corporation, Inc. for Big Walnut Creek Fiber Loops ST-1095. Mr. Crawford,
Yes, thank you. It's Gutenkopf.
thank you.
No problem. So as a brief recap, this is the Big Walnut Fiber Loop project, which will install roughly 7,500 feet of new conduit and fiber, while also utilizing an existing 5,200 feet of conduit that we installed as part of the Big Walnut Trail Section 4 project. This conduit is also on the pedestrian bridge that is crossing the Big Walnut. So this will create a redundant connection across the Big Walnut Creek that will create redundancy for city services, safety services, businesses on the network. It has become even more important over the past few months and years with the new MEC location on the West Johnstown, as well as all the data center additions out in New Albany as these companies are looking for pass through the city. So it'll open the door for us for some potential lease or sale opportunities as there are not many crossings across the Big Walnut. So we will have the prime crossing to try and sell that to those companies. So the bids were opened on July 1st and were subsequently reviewed. We did receive a total of 4 bids. Upon our review, we are recommending award of the bid to Gutenkopf Corporation, who was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. As with all of our construction contracts, we are requesting a 10% contingency with the contract, which will bring the total amount to $533,145. So we are respectfully requesting an ordinance to enter into contract with Gutenkopf for the Big Walnut Fiber Loop project.
Thank you. Could you just explain the difference between the engineer's estimate and the contract and the requested amount?
Yeah, so the engineer's estimate is the estimate that the engineer's office puts together. That is our best guess as to what the bids would come in as. It gives the bidders an idea of what we're looking for, but also protects us should the costs exceed our engineer's estimate, which could potentially exceed our budget. And then we would have the opportunity to not award the contract or rebid the contract should it exceed the engineer's estimate. We did add an additional 10% on top of that as well for any unforeseen costs within the construction.
Excellent, thank Thank you, Mr. Crawford.
problem.
Any discussion? Mr. Stetzer?
Just a quick question. So Grant, there's a number of, I guess, sort of a map within one of the exhibits locating, or I'm sorry, there's a location map that's broader in view, and then there's kind of some drill downs into existing intersections and things like that. Just a very general question. As it runs along section 4, it appears to be depicted in the various items there. Is that intended to go next to the bike path or underneath the bike path?
So that is the existing conduit that is next to the bike path. I believe it does cross under the bike path in certain locations, but that is the previously existing conduit that was installed as part of that project.
So they would just fish it through that?
Yes,
Okay.
they will also be installing, the name escapes me. It's like a sock that has holes inside of it, inside the conduit, so that you can slip in additional fibers and keep them all separate, which allow us that greater opportunity to lease space to other carriers.
Okay. So residents shouldn't anticipate any disruption in the path or anything like that as this is occurring?
I would say no. There may be some minor impacts when the contractor is out there physically pulling it in, but nothing substantial by any means whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. On for first reading at the next meeting, no need to come back, and then on consent for at the subsequent meeting? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Crawford. Section E, items from the Department of Planning. We have one item tonight, ordinance ORD-0038-2022. Director Blackford.
Yeah, I'll make this quick since this should be pretty easy. You just heard from Service and Engineering about their permit consolidation. So in order for that to happen, building needs to update their fee schedule because we no longer need the driveway approach and sidewalk permits because that's all part of the right-of-way. That's it. That's all it is.
All right, any questions for Director Blackford?
No.
All right. And this would need to go on for a first, no need to come back, consent at second meeting. All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much.
All right, section F of the agenda, items from the Department of Administrative Services. Director Volmer, are you going to in order as listed on the agenda?
Sure, whatever you'd like.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda is Resolution RES-0021-2022, a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds.
I'm here on behalf of Director Burry and myself to request a resolution for transfer appropriations from the Finance Contract Services accounts to Finance Full-Time Wages accounts. As you know, we started implementing a complete finance, HR, and payroll system. They were doing that in 2018 when I came. During that time in 2019, the full-time payroll coordinator resigned. At that time, the departments of finance and HR, again, were in the middle of implementing those systems. And so while we were implementing those systems, our current systems, which are antiquated, had to continue to be used to process payroll. The city contracted with a payroll consultant who previously worked in the Department of Finance in order to immediately cover this vacancy, as that consultant understood our current systems. In addition, she also helped implement our current systems that are fully functioning at this time, with the exception of one, the police scheduler, also known as Telestaff, is the remainder of that project left to implement, and that's anticipated to be implemented by the end of the year. An analysis of the payroll analyst position was performed, and it was determined that a full-time payroll analyst is needed to perform the payroll function for the city. The payroll function includes processing payroll with proper withholdings and benefit deductions on a biweekly basis, and all the associated reporting in the back end on the off-payroll week. In addition, the payroll analyst will assist with maintaining the payroll system and part of the HR system as well. So Director Burry and I are respectfully requesting to transfer existing funds from the Finance Contract Services to the Finance Full-Time Wages.
Thank you, Director Vollmer. Any discussion on this item? All right, consent agenda? All right, thank you. Ordinance ORD-0039-2022 and ORD-0040-2022. I'm assuming you'll like to take those together. Okay,
Yes, thank you.
thank you.
These two ordinances are to have the mayor sign the Fraternal Order of Police contract, and then the request for a supplemental appropriation to ensure the contract is implemented correctly. The City of Gahanna and the FOP Lodge 9 have reached a tentative agreement on the 2022 to 2024 contract, and the bargaining unit, which includes the officers and the supervisors, have voted in favor of adopting that successor agreement. So I'll go over some of the big changes to that contract and then come back to the money part. So similar to the OLC contract, we are standardizing our non-discrimination language. In the internal investigations section, the city was able to secure that complaint investigations received from a known source increased from 45 to 90 days. So individuals have 90 days to file a complaint on a member of the FOP bargaining unit. In addition, the members will be received, we codified that the members will receive a copy of the complaint or summary of facts to be provided to them 24 hours prior to any internal investigation questioning. That is a practice that occurs now, so that is just being added. In Article 11, corrective action and records, there was a change to how many years a suspension of record can be kept in a file. So suspensions of 5 years or less will stay in the file for 3 years, and suspensions of more than 5 years will now remain in files for 5 years. That's an increase of 2 years, and then the safety director can also add an additional 2 years based on the seriousness of the offense. In the promotions language, we standardized the language between sergeant and lieutenant, removed the written exam component. And in assignments and seniority, we removed some non-existing language surrounding a canine, and then allowed for interim shift bidding when a premium shift becomes available before a probationary officer is placed on that shift. A premium shift are ones with days off that surround the weekend. Wages for 2022 is 3%, which is retro back to January 1st, followed by a 3.25 and another 3.25 in the out years. A signing bonus of $750 in year 2 and $500 in year 3, and that money can be added into a member's HSA. We established step 3 for the ranks of sergeant and lieutenant to be more competitive in the Lodge 9 agencies. In addition, we added, similar to the OLC, that the annual service credit can be added to a member's HSA. For hours of work and overtime, there was some clarification in addition that in order to receive 7th day pay, officers must actually work 3 hours and not simply receive 3 hours of pay. And added that special mission specific enforcement programs are not subject to seniority considerations when assigning overtime. In uniforms, we agreed to create a pilot program to establish a uniform committee. As you know, police uniforms have come quite full circle in the past couple of years, so it was important for both parties to add a uniform committee so that our uniforms can remain standard. In holidays, we elimination of President's Day with the addition of Juneteenth, and then the renaming of Columbus Day. In insurance, similar to the unclassified in the OLC contract, a high deductible plan will begin in 2023 with HSA contributions from the city for $2,000 for individuals and $4,000 for the other 3 plans. After expiration of the agreement, the city agreed to provide at least half of the deductible or whatever other city employees receive. This is the same language that the OLC contract voted for. Again, our goal is to standardize insurance language throughout all city groups. And then in sick and injury leave, we allow for cash out of up to 120 hours of sick leave at half the rate of pay, as long as members maintain an amount in their bank. And then there's a list on my report of the other articles that have no changes or just minor word changes, clarifying chairman to chairperson, his, her, items like that. The estimated 3-year cost impact with estimated overtime is between $1.7 and $1.8 million. That includes cost savings from the sick leave buyout and the insurance change. So the second ordinance on there is a supplemental requesting the amounts of $102,950 from the unencumbered, unappropriated fund of the general fund balance of the general fund to various overtime accounts, and then $19,500 from the unappropriated, unencumbered balance of the police pension fund. Those two amounts are needed to implement the new contract. The reason there's not additional requests for salary in the supplemental appropriation is because the division is carrying 3 vacancies right now that we're working to fill, and those have been funded the full year. So that savings in salary and benefits is being used for the retro pay as well. In order to meet CERB filing deadlines, it is requested this legislation be passed on emergency and waiver. In addition, this will allow contract terms to begin immediately upon passage and allow those members to receive their back pay in a timely manner. Happy to answer any questions, and Chief Spence is here as well.
Any discussion on this item? Mr. Schnetzer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Director Vollmer, thank you for the report. Just a question regarding the changes of the holidays. Was that initiated by the city or was that initiated by the lodge?
That was an issue by the city when we added Juneteenth.
Okay.
You'll recall that at the end of last year, we added Juneteenth into the unclassified ordinance.
Sure.
So that's to standardize the holidays.
Now, I understand this is essentially a done deal, but I guess my question, the basis for it is, was there any consideration to when that holiday may fall, perhaps during Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, and potentially running up the cost for our sworn staff?
Yes, that was a discussion. We also had the discussion with Visit Gahanna and what the ramifications could be to them, as we might need to look at whether or not some of those additional added and above costs are passed along. But we did look at the calendar out for a few years to see exactly how that would impact.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you for your diligence in negotiating this, and thank you to union members for their work on reaching an agreement at the bargaining table. We appreciate that, and I understand that the health insurance issue is a sticky subject, and I'm glad that we were able to come to terms on that. So you have requested waiver and emergency. Does anybody want this on regular, or are we comfortable with consent on this item?
I'm fine with consent.
Yes, okay. So we'll have it on consent agenda at next week's meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else on the agenda? All right, guys, we're adjourned. Good job.